Hello, good evening. It is Monday, May 12th, 2025. Welcome to the Portland, Maine Board of Education Finance, Operations, and Personnel Committee meeting. My name is Sarah Bryden. I'm the chair of the committee, and with us we have some of the squares are moving around as people join. Let's see. So with us today in this meeting, we have committee member, board member Opperman, committee member and board member Lena, committee member, board member Noor. We also have, although she is not a member of this committee, we have board chair Lentz. And then from staff, we have, from staff, we have Jennifer Slaving, who is the Executive Director of HR. We have Dr. Sarah Warren, who is the Executive Director of Strategy. We have Heather Peters, who is the Accounting Manager. And we have Dr. Scallon, who is the Superintendent. We have a really great group of people here for tonight's meeting. We also have a very full and exciting agenda. So I'm just going to give you the highlights of that. So let's see. So we are going to get an update on the fiscal year 26 budget. We're going to get fiscal year 25 update on year-to-date financials. We're going to hear some information from staff and an initial conversation about potential fiscal impacts to potential cell phone policies that might be implemented in the district. We're going to get a human resources update. And we are going to discuss some multilingual hardship funds that we're getting from the Maine Department of Education, which will require a committee vote to accept. Before I turn it over to staff to go through those exciting and fascinating agenda topics, I'm going to check and see if there are any members of the community who want to give public comment. If there are, I will go through the process and parameters around that. So let's see, I'm checking to see if there's any attendees with a Zoom hand raised, and I am not seeing any. So I am going to close public comment. And now I will turn it over to staff to move us through those topics that I just outlined.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take lead on that. If you can just give me 1 second, I'm going to pull up Zoom to help guide us today. There we go. Just checking to make sure you guys can see that on your end. Perfect. Chair Bryden already did a great job of going over the agenda, so I will skip that. And kudos, by the way, for getting all the titles right as well for staff. City Council has a second public hearing and vote on the school budget scheduled for May 19th at 5 p.m. Just want to give a quick update to the committee on where we're at. And so the city's finance committee approved the school budget on a 3-0 vote. The city had their first public hearing on May 5th. At that time, there were no public comments on the budget. And the city, as I said, will have their second public hearing, which again is another opportunity for the community to engage and give feedback on May 19th at 5 p.m. And certainly encouraging anybody and everybody to join that meeting, as it's the sort of last time to give input before it goes to the referendum on June 10th. And so just wanted to share that. And then, Chair, if you'd like, I'm going to do my 2 sections and then open for any questions. Great. Wanted to provide an update on the district's year-to-date financials and share where we're at through April 30th of 2025, along with the 3-year comparison. So on this slide, you have revenues. And so at the bottom of the screen, you can see that the adopted budget had a $161,416,000 budget. It was revised up based on increased revenue, which you can see sits in those grant sections. And as we're through April, we would anticipate to be at 83% of our revenue collected. You can see here that Our general fund is at 81%. That's just a little bit of timing on when you get or we get payments from the state. Adult education is at 88%, so running a little bit ahead of schedule on revenue, which is great. And then food service is at 63%, and that is just a timing aspect of submitting for reimbursement, but then even more so, we just did not recognize yet any of the fund reserve that they're using this year. So you may remember that food service is on a $1 million spend down between this year and next year. And we'll recognize the revenue that was budgeted there from fund balance for food service when we get to that time of the year. Towards the end of the year, when we then recognize whatever the difference is between their revenue, their actual revenue, and their expenses. And the difference will be the use of fund balance. Here we see expenditures. And so again, thinking that 83% is where we want to be at this time of the year. A lot of the bottom part where you see expenditures, there's a little bit of a timing piece on it, and where we revised up based on the ability to collect or budget additional funds towards it. So you see that with ESSER funds, that it went from an adopted budget of $433,000 to 1.3. And so that's part of why you see that higher there. The expenditures look like we're in a good spot. Right. So again, if we'd wanted to be at 83%, you see that our general fund is at 76%. Adult education is the closest at 81, and then food service is at 75. And then when we look at the broad categories, we can see where that total of the 76% in general funds and overall gets into here. So you can see that, again, 83% is where we should be. Personnel is lower at 75% right now. Contracted is higher, it's at 90. That makes sense based on the fact that you'd see some contracted services front loaded and not running all the way through the end of the year, whereas personnel runs all the way through the end of the year. Supplies is at 76%. Other costs. So other costs is truly a range of expenses. It includes PATHS equipment. It includes a previous fiscal year's IRS penalty. Those things are all captured in other costs. And then you can see debt service, which is tracking towards where it should be. And so with that, I'm going to take down the share for a minute and just see if there are questions from the committee for either myself or for Heather Peters.
Questions? I have a quick question. So if the timing wise, the target is 83. I mean, obviously, it's a budget, it's going to, fluctuate. If we're generally at about 76%, could we just hear a couple of sentences explaining why we're not necessarily looking to get the, we don't necessarily want to keep costs depressed artificially. And if we get to the end of the year and there are funds that we haven't used, what happens with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and just for additional context for that, we just put out a memo about a month ago, a little bit less, to school directors and staff that also impact this. So if there are funds that are not used, those funds in almost all cases go towards our fund reserve. And so they are able to be saved and used for a rainy day, to offset unanticipated budget asks in future years. And you see that happened this year, where we just got our audit findings back that said that we budgeted for $3.6 million and used less than that. And this year we budgeted for $3.9 million those are all fund reserves. And so the ability to run a little bit under budget is good. It's not spend it or lose it. And in fact, if you don't spend it, it goes into your savings account. So recognizing that and recognizing the fact that the economic forecast is a little cloudy, that there's unknown around federal funds in the future. We did put out guidance to our directors and school leaders, telling them that this year we were not pushing for a spend down of all of their funds. Typically, you see that in schools, that they start to spend down any funds that are remaining. This year, we've said not to do that, so that we are able to maintain as much of a rainy day as possible.
And I just as a follow-up, thank you. That was really helpful. As a follow-up to that, I know in past years we've talked about how there is a limit to how much we can have in our fund reserve balance. And I'm curious, just I don't necessarily need the exact dollars and cents, but are we close to approaching that? Are we very far from approaching that cap? Is there still a cap? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, so there is still a cap. The cap is supposed to go from 9% of your operating budget to 5% of your operating budget. And there are several bills that are currently in front of the legislature right now to maintain the 9% cap. And so that's an unknown. If at any point at the end of a fiscal year, if you're beyond that cap, you work with the state on a 3-year spend down to get back under the cap. At the audited financials for fiscal year 24, right? So we're in 25. The audited financials for 24 had us at $14 million. So actually pretty close to that 9%. Again, we every year use our fund balance in part of our budget. And so I'm not worried if we got to a spot where we had to spend down on that. But we're pretty close to it right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay, I think we're good to move on.
Great. I'm going to pass it at this point to Jennifer. Jennifer, do you want me to run your slides just to keep it easy?
That would be great, but I thought something else was coming before me, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think the cell phone.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Cell phone is. Sarah, would you like me to run your slide?
Yes, please.
No problem. I'm doing slides no matter what.
Thank you. So I can start talking. Oh, there it is anyway. As I think most board members and some members of the public are aware, we are in the midst of doing a lot of learning and public engagement and thinking around cell phones, and in particular, the use of cell phones by students during the school day. So there is a policy that is currently under review and will come to the full board as recommended by the Board Policy and Curriculum Committee. Will come to the full board for first read on May 20th. And then, assuming they continue to move forward in that direction, a vote on June 10th. This is policy JFCK, which governs cell phones and other electronic devices. So as we are working our way through this process, we are really digging into what the implementation would look like and what it would take to put in basically a cell phone free school policy, which comes along with a lot of fairly detailed logistical issues that we have to work our way through. One of the biggest ones being that we have to have a plan for how we store phones during the school day in a way that keeps them inaccessible to students, again, if this policy passes. We're still in the midst of doing a lot of research and conversation around this, but we pulled together just a brief kind of rough overview of how we think the pricing could work out. This is not something that we had budgeted for in our budget for the coming year because we did not actually know that we were heading down this path at the time we wrote the budget. So we lost the slide, Ryan. So our assumption is that whatever costs are incurred as a result of the shift in policy, if that happens, would be we would just, as staff, go back to our budget and figure out where within our operational budget we would draw that money from. There are a number of different ways to store cell phones that our colleague districts have been using. There are things as basic as having a rolling cart like we currently might use for laptops or other electronic devices. People put crates on them and then they put big manila envelopes in them and labeled them with student names. In other locations, including actually in some of our classrooms now, there are phone hotels or, essentially a cabinet with slots that have space for phones and other devices. That's the cheapest way to go, is to try to do one of those more rudimentary things. The estimate of 30 to 40K is just based on some initial calculations and looking at some of the spending of other districts that shared their information. Lock Pouch is a particular company and product which provided us an estimate. We're going to be talking to them in more detail to learn more about their product in the coming days, but they gave us an estimate on what it would cost to do middle and high school pouches for all students. My assumption is that we'll be doing something simpler at the elementary school potentially, just because there aren't as many cell phones at that level. And then Yonder is another one that we've looked at, which is fairly common around many districts, including one that we'll be visiting next week. Our colleagues up in Bath at Morse High School are using Yonder, but that is a more expensive solution. And I'm guessing at this point, probably not the one we will choose, only because it is fairly costly. But we're still very much in discussion stages of this, and the policy has yet to pass. So that's where we're at.
Questions? Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Warren, in pricing out the pouches of various sorts, is it possible to get a pricing for just high schools, considering that perhaps middle schools might also be able to have a less expensive, simpler way of doing it with just the way the schools run?
Yeah, absolutely. We can get the both of these estimates were based on, or the Lock Pouch and the Yonder estimates were based on middle and high school, but we could certainly ask for just a high school number. I do think quite a few of our students at the middle school level carry phones, but I don't have an exact number. That's something that's really hard for us to gather information on. But yeah, we can absolutely get more sort of varied quotes.
Board Member Lena, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Warren, I'm wondering, I don't believe this was a line item in the budget, the FY26 budget. So where are we thinking this would be coming from, the fund balance, or are there leftover funds from the FY25 budget?
Right. All right. So you're right. It's not in the budget for the coming year. And our current thinking is that we would have to go back and look at the approved budget for the coming year and draw the funds from operational costs. So there would be some kind of a trade-off. We don't know what it is yet. Or I suppose there could be a decision to use fund balance, but that would be a larger decision. I think our immediate thinking is that we would try to find money within the existing budget.
So, and just if I can jump in there, there was a small amount allocated among schools when it was originally thought that the policy was just going to be a K-8 policy. So there is some funds. It's not a large amount, and I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it is, but there's a small amount that's already balanced. Just to for board to have this in perspective as we go through this and when there are changes, the bottom line dollar amount that's approved by the board and then city council and then voters at the referendum, that is the fixed bottom line. And so we can't choose to add additional fund balance to pay for things that were unanticipated or new requests. Instead, whenever we get something like this, we need to make adjustments. And that is something that we can do. The question will be sort of a little bit of like how we want to adjust. Also, where things come in lower than anticipated, that there may be some unanticipated savings. But that's how it has to work.
Thank you for that. Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Biden. One of the things that came up today at Casco Bay was taking into consideration any necessary staffing changes or if there were stipends that could help building leadership work on this over the summer so that they could start the ground, start, at the beginning of school feeling really confident with a policy. So I think that this is what's lined out here seems to be just for equipment, but I would be interested to know if there are any other staffing costs or other incidentals that we think might be outside of just the equipment.
I mean, my initial thinking is no, just based on what we've researched so far. I mean, I do understand, and I think we all have to be sensitive to the fact that if this policy goes through, it is a big shift in thinking and practice for school communities. And we will have to work hard to figure out what the cell phone sort of collection process is. It maybe not collection, right? Because if we go with some form of a pouch, it's actually swiping students in on a magnet, or they swipe themselves in and they keep the pouch with them. So in some sense, if we went with something like the lock pouch, that would actually be more expensive than the basic approaches to storage, but it would have some appeal in terms of probably being a lot more efficient and requiring less staff time and effort, and a little bit less sort of pressure on the district or staff members at the school level in terms of managing and storing and keeping a lookout for the phones, because the students would still have them on their body, but in a pouch. So I think, we still don't know for sure how every school would manage this. I can't quite see us adding staff just to help check in and out cell phones during the day. But maybe that's something that folks will somehow, figure out that we need to do. And then I think we'd have to figure out how to pay for it. Schools that have been doing this in other places do it with their existing staff, and they get it down to a routine and they get it done. In terms of summer costs, again, I don't really see that as being a major thing. It's not as complicated as it might seem. I just think it's going to take people some time to get used to it. So yeah, I'm not envisioning a whole lot of staffing costs around this.
I have a quick question. I'm hoping that you might be able to give us a couple of sentences, if you have this level of detail, explaining what the difference in the product and the service would be between Lock Pouch and Yonder, because what I'm seeing on the slide, at least, is it seems that they are both a pouch approach to middle and high school students, but the price tag is so different. So I'm curious what Yonder does that Lock Pouch doesn't do.
Me too. We have met with Yonder, and we will be meeting with Lock Pouch, but haven't met with them yet. I'm still relatively new to the cell phone scene. Some of my colleagues who were working on this previously pointed me in the direction of Lock Pouch and suggested that it's a very similar product to Yonder, but they just promise a much lower price point. So I think after we have that meeting with Lock Pouch, we'll understand better what it is that may allow them to have such a relatively low price point, but I can't point to that now. I mean, I think they strive to be the same as what Yonder is providing, but I can't promise that.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Lena, did I see your hand go up? Or
I just did a quick Google search earlier, and what I saw was that Yonder offers a lease option and Lock Pouch is a purchase option. That's as far as I got, but it just sounds like maybe a different model of
Yeah.
the devices to the schools.
Okay. I'm sure we will all learn a lot more about this as we move forward. Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
And I was just going to add that I believe that Yonder was first to market. So I think that things have just like changed and now there's competition. So as this is caught on in more districts. So I think that could be part of the reason we're seeing different pricing here.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Yonder, when we met with them, they didn't actually mention the leasing option. They specifically actually were touting the fact that it's a big purchase up front, but then you only have to budget enough to replace, pouches that are wearing out over time. So they see that as a selling point of their product. But you still do have a recurring cost as you have to replace pouches. But the idea with them is that a pouch will last for several years. And so typically you'll buy a pouch, give it to a student, and then that remains their pouch, kind of like we do with laptops. So that would be their pouch throughout high school, for example. And, they would be responsible for maintaining it and keeping it in good shape. And we would have to have procedures in place for replacement, just like we do with laptops. But that is a possible way of going, but maybe at the Lock Pouch price point rather than the Under price point.
Okay. Two quick things that just came to mind. One being a sort of a clarification, and then the other one being a follow-up question. Just that I feel like everybody in this conversation does already know this and recognize this, but I just wanted to be extra 1000% clear, for anybody watching or, watching a recording of this meeting later, that we are talking about something that has not been decided. And so the Curriculum and Policy Committee and the full board are going to be, reviewing whether to implement a cell phone policy, but just because we're talking about these potential costs does not mean that anything has been decided, correct?
Right. So there is a cell phone policy, but this is a proposed revision.
Yes.
Which will come before the board for first read on May 20th and for a vote on June 10th. We are in the middle of a fairly intensive public engagement process right now. So tomorrow we will have our third conversation with high school students. Tomorrow is Portland High School. And Thursday, we've actually had a work group running of high school interested people, students, staff, and families. That will continue and have its third of 4 meetings on Thursday. And then Thursday evening, there is a meeting at Portland High School in order for more, families and staff to have a chance to weigh in. So all of that is on the website. Folks can see a little bit more background and information with all of the engagement sessions. And we'll be doing a survey soon as well.
Great. Thank you so much. And I apologize for my lack of precision. There is a policy already, and so thank you for getting that.
I just want to make sure people know in case they want to see it. It's on our board docs, the current version. Yeah.
Excellent. My follow-up question has to do with, in terms of, so let's say that the revisions to the policy do go ahead. Let's say we're in that reality in the future. And we are, as a district, looking at which of these approaches, the phone hotels, the lock pouch, the Yonder, which of these approaches make sense from an operational perspective. I'm curious about to what degree different locations, different grade bands, so like all the high schools, all the middle schools, or individual schools would be able to make decisions about their communities. And, for example, if could a school or could the middle schools collectively decide we can do this with phone hotels and envelopes, or is this something where we really need to ultimately make an operational decision across the whole district?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first version of the rules that we drafted to go along with the policy, which is just a draft, and we're trying to kind of work on the rules in parallel to the policy working its way through the process so that we're not completely behind if the policy passes. So the first draft that was shared with the policy and curriculum committee when we took the draft of the policy to them was basically giving complete leeway to all schools to figure out their own approach. And the feedback that we've gotten is that that's too much leeway. People would like to see a lot more standardization. So my current instinct, and again, this is, all very much in the works, but my instinct is that probably doing it grade band by grade band makes sense. So there might be something that's more workable for our high schools, and then it might look the same at the middle school level, or maybe it would be a little different. I definitely think at the elementary school level, it probably could be something a little simpler just because there aren't as many phones.
Okay. Yeah. Board Member Opperman, it looks like you had your hand up and then down. And so I'm curious if you have something like directly related to what Dr. Warren just said.
I do. I think when the conversation was about, and the revision passed on the policy committee, the concern was that there would be selectivity, that one high school would be different from another high school, and that then starts all sorts of other conversations, likewise with middle school. So as Dr. Warren said, I think very much a grade level rule would be appropriate because, logistically and perceptively, it should be, a different. Elementary school is very different, and there are different concerns with elementary school children with various kinds of phones and watches and things.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to reinforce the fact that,
Okay, great. Thank you. Board Member Lena, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on that middle school versus high school. Do we need to purchase the pouches for the middle school? I will say just, anecdotally, it seems more and more parents are opting out of getting devices for the younger children, like children that are currently in elementary school that will then be in middle school in a few years. There is a big movement towards the wait until 8th, that kind of thing. So, but that's not to say that they might not have other devices that they're bringing to school, like smartwatches and that kind of thing. So I just don't know if there will be as much of a need, but again, it's hard to predict that. And I wonder too, if you get a Yonder pouch or a lock pouch when you enter 6th grade, is like, does that mean that you then have to bring a device to school? It's just kind of, and I know we're not really talking about policy, but I wanted to just add that one more thing in. Thank you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
I was just saying, don't hesitate to talk to the policy committee tomorrow.
Wonderful. Full circle conversation. Other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, this is really good information. I appreciate taking the time to pull this together for us, and appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think it's on to me. So I think everyone on this call probably knows this, board members already, but I do want to just sort of remind and share that in late February, early March, we did have a structural transition with some staffing changes in HR. And I just wanted to kind of give you the names and roles of the new people so that if you have any questions or need anything specific, and for anyone who's watching now or watching the recording, they also know how to get to HR and who to go to. So we have a gentleman named Gavin Pat. He's our new HR project manager, and he oversees things such as benefits and retirements and leaves, retirement plans, workers' comp, OSHA, all these things. Also doing some work on getting our personnel files in order and looking toward a deeper digitization of our personnel files, and also supporting our website and doing some, after we get through open enrollment, doing some back-end work to help get our website looking a little bit better. We have 3 analysts. Erin Tosi is returning, as well as 2 new members, Elizabeth Redwood and Bridget Wheeler. And I think the biggest difference here for our analysts and then our coordinators below is sort of how the structure of the department is going. And so our analysts are really taking, once someone is hired, they're or recommended for hire, they're taking that person from start to finish on that onboarding process. So doing the onboarding, including the benefits piece that used to be sort of done separately. So they're doing the whole onboarding, they're doing group onboardings. And then part of their work is actually also doing some post onboarding, post hire, post start date follow up with our new employees to really check in and see how things are going, what kinds of questions they have, make sure they're understanding their paychecks, make sure there's no errors in their paychecks and that their direct deposit worked, and just all of that sort of follow up to make sure that people's experience entering into Portland Public Schools is a positive one. Of course, they'll also do some fun work with data entry and pulling reports, and then supporting our certification review and making sure that the people we are hiring are as often as possible and as best as possible a match to the position. And then we have 2 HR coordinators, Adam Greenwood and Liz Vaughn, and they're really handling on the front end all of the hiring and job postings, working with schools to create requisitions so that those job postings can go up. They're also supporting leaves, leave tracking, and time cards, as well as some of that post-employment stuff. So when people do retire or resign, that they are ensuring that they're handling unemployment claims and making sure people are getting their COBRA paperwork. They'll also be doing some support with evaluations, course reimbursements. We have our professional learning, our learning management system. So a lot of that work too. And they're also handling our general mailboxes so that we've got one point person on our benefits mailbox and on our general HR mailbox. Those are our email boxes because sometimes in the past, those have been sort of monitored by more than one person. So this way we just have one set of eyes on those to make sure that things are moving through and being addressed. So that's the new team. So a little bit of data about where we are, and this was when we put the presentation together for posting last week. So this is data from May 7th. But we do continue to support our staff, our HR staff in ensuring compliance with CHRC and certification. So you might remember that back in October, we reported we had 41 remaining staff out of compliance with their CHRC. I have to, like, this whole slide around CHRC has to have a huge, huge, huge shout out to Beth Linovich, who continues to have this like be her thing and her goal. And I'll see her in the hall and she'll report to me, we're under 20. We're under 15, we're under 10. So she's really, really taken this on and been pretty amazing at helping get this cleaned up. So on a monthly basis, people are notified if they have an expiring CHRC, and reminding them that it's their obligation, professional obligation, to renew their certification, as well as sort of what that timeline looks like. We have had a couple of situations where after we've reviewed and made multiple attempts to contact people, we have had a few people we've just simply had to terminate from our payroll system. If we noticed they hadn't worked in a while, hadn't gotten any pay for 6 or more months, that made it a little easier. And we assume these people maybe have just moved on. And so currently we have 4 employees. That's it. That's what's left right now with our CHRC, working to correct whatever deficiencies they may have. The kinds of issues that are coming up now at this point are things like someone maybe has 2 accounts with the Maine DOE, and so one of those accounts is fine. The other one is triggering a violation of certification for us. And we have had to place, for example, someone on an unpaid leave while they're working to sort out what's happening with their certification. So that's kind of the state we're in right now, but so much better than where we were. And again, Beth, we'll just say thank you to her over and over and over again. There we go. And then in addition, we have our certification requirements. So in October, again, in that report, we shared with you that we had 57 staff at that time that were out of compliance with their certifications. That number is now down to 39. For 38 of those, we continue to not have significant concern. Again, there are things like people who are on a J1 visa who don't need to get a certification as part of their visiting teacher status, or it might be that we have an ed tech serving in a substitute role for the moment, or someone has a certification, but it might not be in the area they're currently teaching, and they're working toward getting a dual certification so that they've got it in more than one area. So there's only one violation of concern right now for us, and this is a recent renewal. Actually, this one just expired at the beginning of May. But we've had a hard time getting this employee to respond. So we continue to do that work, and in a few days here, we'll hit a place where the lack of responsiveness will potentially result in that same sort of unpaid leave that we had to do with the other employee for CHRC. So hopefully it'll get resolved by the end of this week. And then staffing. So we're underway with all of our staffing as we look toward the 25-26 school year. As of May 7th, we had received a combination of 47 retirements and resignations, and those are effective at the end of this current school year. Just as a comparison, in 23-24, there were a total of 77 resignations and 46 retirements. So we're well below those numbers right now, but I will just say that we do have a lot of people still requesting retirement meetings, so we do think that this number will grow as we move into the next month or two. We do have job posting and hiring already going. We're already in full swing. We have 75 postings on our website at this time. And this bullet point gets a shout out to Sarah Goodall. I promised her I'd give her a shout out here because we've already closed a lot of our postings due to early hiring. Sarah was on it and has already filled a number of the positions at Lyseth for next school year. The postings that we have up some of these are vacancies that have been created because of retirements and resignations, and then some of these are new positions that have been created in the budget process. And we do know that not all of the positions are posted yet, so we do anticipate more things coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'd really like to, as best as possible, have jobs posted and filled earlier this year than last. And so the data that I have for that is at the beginning of August of 2024. I was fairly new in the role. We still had 87 vacancies that we needed to try to fill before the start of the school year. So we're hopeful that it won't be that high as we get into August this year. We're kind of on the move now. And so ideally that number, we know we may still have vacancies, of course, in August, but hopefully a lot less than in 2024. Thank you, Ryan. So the positions that we have available right now really, it went back. Except I knew what that one said. It really does represent all of our different bargaining groups. We have positions in administration, classroom support staff with our ed techs, teachers, custodial, transportation, really across the district. But we do continue to anticipate that we'll have challenges with certain areas, as we have had in this current year and in prior years with substitutes. Special education in particular continues to be a challenging area to fill positions. And then custodial and transportation tend to be our harder non-classroom roles to fill. We are having monthly interviews for substitutes, so we're continuing to do that. We've hired over 50 substitutes this school year, and we just this month brought on another 15 subs that not only are some of them are able to work this school year, but really they indicated an interest in working for us starting in 25-26, and then we have another day of interviews this month. So we are trying to get some additional subs on board in anticipation of the new school year. We've also attended a few different job fairs, and through that engagement, we've connected with 75 different people who were very eager about the idea of working for Portland Public Schools, who are aligned with our vision in Portland. And so now we are engaging in some targeted reach out to some of those folks, again, particularly people who are interested in working in some of our harder to fill areas. And Big thanks to Grace and Fong and Tess, our communications team, because you've probably seen on social media, they've been really doing a nice job of putting our vacancies out there and making sure that our community is aware that we do have vacancies. And so if you on the board, or you were watching this meeting, or you're checking out our social media, if you know people who are a good fit for Portland Public Schools and who are looking for employment opportunities, the positions are there. And that was it. That was my slides. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Board Member Lena, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. That was a great presentation. One question about the HR staff and their roles. I didn't see mention on under anyone's responsibility about exit interviews. I know that's something that's come up a number of times with departing staff, really making sure we're getting feedback from them. So I wanted to just check and see whose responsibility that is.
Oh, that's a great question. I have done some of them. I would say that that's definitely an area that we don't really have a good formal process for. I've done some during the course of this year, and I know I have one coming up. So it's inconsistent for sure, but I'm the one who does them at this time if we have them. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Similarly, I also have a question about that slide with the, and this is a more minor curiosity question, but it looked like Gavin and the coordinators both had leaves within their purview, and I'm curious, like, which part of the leave process, how does that overlap?
Okay, great. Yeah. So Gavin is the one who would have sort of the oversight of leaves, but in terms of the actual administration of the leaves, Adam's taking the lead on that right now, and Liz is learning and supporting that. So what I would say is when they joined our team, Adam has a pretty good amount of experience in leave administration. So that's why he's taking lead and serving a little bit in a training space with Liz. And she had strengths in different areas. She's really taken the lead on all of the requisitions and postings. So Gavin is really there to provide oversight, to ensure that we're following applicable protocols, and supervising Adam and Liz with their work with that. And I am as well right now as we're transitioning, because there's a lot of heavy lifts. So I've definitely got my hands in that work as well.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. Other questions, comments? Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Yeah, just I really appreciate these updates. And I'm curious from you, Jennifer, like if it feels, I think one of the biggest kind of chunks of your work as you were coming in was to really, solidify systems and build like sustainability within the department and make it so, if we lost one person, everybody would know how to do things, even if we lost a key staff member. And so I guess I'm curious to hear from you, like, one, in kind of like building the systems in that department, does it feel like you're still like uncovering things that we still need to build systems around? Or are you in the part where you are building systems, or kind of like is it getting towards sustainability yet? Does that make sense?
No, great question. I mean, I think a little bit of all of it, right? So what I will say is I think like we've got some really strong SOPs in place now, it has been very exciting. And you're right. I really had a very intentional desire for cross training for exactly what you talked about, right? So that if somebody, not even if they left us, but if somebody had needed to go on leave for a couple of months, that work wouldn't sort of disappear with them, and that knowledge wouldn't disappear with them. So we're working on that cross training piece. I think that feels pretty successful right now. We have a lot of meetings where we're all in the room and we're all talking about it, and people will show up and say, I know this isn't my primary responsibility, but I want to be here anyway and hearing this. So I know we're having a lot of conversations about like even just HR pipelines and pathways and what kind of areas of interest for the people on the team, and what do they want, how do they want to grow professionally? And then, are we uncovering stuff? I would say yes. Like there's actually been things that I've been like, okay, it still feels a little like we're pulling back the layers of the onion. And at the same time, saying like, okay, this layer of the onion, now we've got the SOP for this layer of the onion, but now there's another layer. So I would say that work is sort of happening in a parallel way. I feel really positive about the direction we're going, but it doesn't. There's still a lot of work to do. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Also, I realized that when I just forged right ahead with that question that is really detailed, I completely forgot to also say thank you for the updates and to just applaud you and the team for making so much progress in some very, very, very important areas. So it was great to see those updates. Obviously, continuous improvement all the time, every day. And just it was really great to see the actual data around the improvement that's already happened. So thank you very much. Any other comments on this topic before we move to our last topic? Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
So Ryan, we have one more topic, correct?
Yep. I just want to add one piece. Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button on my two screens. Just wanted to add one additional piece, just recognizing Jennifer. This is actually going to be her first full hiring season with us upcoming. And so, Chair, as you recognize sort of the work that the HR team has taken on and that Jennifer has led, it's also kudos to her as we aren't even at a year with Jennifer's leadership in the department. So just a big thank you. There we go. So this last piece, if it would please the committee, we'd like to come back to you next meeting with a full proposal on how moving forward in fiscal year 26, we will get the committee's approval for substantial changes in the budget, whether recognizing new revenue that's been provided to the district or changes in expenses that are of significance. And so we'll come back to that in June, if we have time at that committee, otherwise at the beginning of the new school year in August. That said, we wanted to start to build that muscle and get in that habit, and to recognize that on April 25th, we received $185,338,000 from the Department of Education, the Maine Department of Education. This was in their multilingual hardship funds. Those funds are available. What they do is they look at the October count and then the April count. And for districts that have, I think it's about a 3% increase in their multilingual population between October 1 and April 1, they are eligible for funds. And the total amount of funds is dependent on how much the Maine Department of Education has available to allocate. And so just to give you a comparison, in fiscal year 24, we received $2 million in multilingual hardship funds. This year, we're receiving $185,000. These funds are not guaranteed. We didn't include them in this year's budget, so this is new money from a zero. And we also didn't include them in fiscal year 26. When we do our budget, we budget for what our need is. And so we already budgeted in fiscal year 25 and in the proposed 26 for exactly what we believe it's necessary to educate our multilingual learner population in Portland. And so we are not viewing this as $185,000 where we need to come up with a new budget, but in fact, it's helping us offset costs that we've already budgeted for. And so we just anticipate using this as an offset on that. And so, Chair Bryan, this actually goes back to a little bit your question at the beginning of the meeting about what happens if there are funds remaining and how it goes towards fund reserve. This $185,000 will offset costs that are already budgeted towards our multilingual, and so should increase our available fund balance as a result. And so recognizing that it's $185,000, and making sure that we have an audit trail of any of these substantial changes, we are asking that you approve this change in our revenue for fiscal year 25.
Thank you for that explanation. I have a quick follow-up question about the conversation that you're teeing up for our next meeting as well. And that is, I want to essentially ask and confirm my understanding that there are some legal constraints and requirements around the way boards of education must and can and interact with budgets in terms of moving money from category to category and things like that. So what I'm looking to get from you is clarification in terms of this staff proposal that you're envisioning bringing to the committee in our next meeting would be informed by those constraints and sort of put them more explicitly and maybe also fold in some procedures that might make sense for our district specifically. Is that what you're basically thinking about?
Yes. So I think there's two different levels of this. There is at the bigger dollar amount, there is legal requirement. So if you move more than 5% from one Maine DOE category to another, there is a clear district vote that is required. There's a second, which is around good financial management and practice, and speaks to just fiscal controls that an outside auditor would want to see in practice. And so that is more of the level at which we're talking about now, which is at what level of change will we seek finance committee or overall board approval for those adjustments. And so it is there's that lower threshold that we're talking about. Right now, our policy does not have that anywhere. And so we're just putting that into practice.
Okay, that's useful and helpful. Thank you so much. So right now I would be looking for a motion to accept the $185,338.81 from the Maine Department of Education for the multilingual hardship funds. Was that Board Member Lena? Thank you so much. I'd be looking for a second, and I need to see all the people. I can't see all the people. Thank you so much, Board Member Opperman. Let's see. So are there any questions or board discussion about the motion? All right. So let's do a quick roll call vote. Board Member Opperman?
Yes.
Board Member Noor?
Yes.
Board Member Lena?
Yes.
And I am voting yes as well, so it is unanimous. Thank you very much. And I believe that was our last topic, correct? Look at that, 58-minute meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, energy, and engagement. Thank you, staff, for your clear, concise information. I am going to look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Board Member Lena. Show of hands to adjourn. Wonderful. Have a good evening, everybody.